Good morning, it's Eve, the creative curator. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you for being here. Today I am sharing with you a tutorial on how to make an accordion pocket. Accordion pocket, you might ask, what is one of those? Let me show you. It is a pocket that is patched on. Quite often it will have a flap as well. And it has a bellows. Can you see this multiple pleat situation we have going on? Ooh. I will put my hand in to show it to you. Let me just remove one of the pins. Hello. Can you see how it expands? So we've created like a bellows effect. You'll quite often find this pocket type on military inspired garments, cargo pants, cargo jackets, that kind of thing. You also find them on accessories like rucksacks and stuff as well. And it's just a pocket type. It's a patched on with lots of pleats, and the way it's created is that it just allows the pocket to expand when you put more things in it. So the pattern that I've used is this version, which is small enough to fit on a fat quarter, but not quite big enough to fit your hand in. So the version that you'll actually be getting is the bigger version, and it's a free pattern that I have on my website that you can download. I'll link to it in the description below. That's it for today. No, it's not, because I haven't shown you the video. Getting ahead of myself. I'm going to show you the tutorial now. If you are enjoying it, please do give the video a like. That's the big thumbs up sign. It just helps me and my channel grow further and faster. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, because we're on Pockets Week, but there'll be more sewing, pattern making and design tutorials coming out. And if you have any comments that you would like to drop in the comment box below, please do, because that also helps me grow my channel and reach more people who would like to learn how to sew, design and make their own clothes. Thanks for watching. Let's roll. So for my accordion pocket, you can see now that as well as cutting it out, I've pinned together all of the sections that need pinning. So to start with, I've folded a double fold hem on the top, and I'm going to stitch along there so it's nice and finished. I'm going to use my goldish thread, so hopefully you'll be able to see it when I'm done. And I'm also going to sew my zigzags here, which is what will create that accordion effect. Okay, I'm going to quickly show you this because the light is disappearing. I have stitched with a double fold hem the opening of my accordion pocket, as you can see. You'll have to excuse my cat, who is cheeping because she's decided it's tea time, even though it's not. Artemisi, nay. And then I have sewn along the edges of my zigzags. I now need to trim in. I'll do that now on camera if I can find my scissors. I'm just going to clip it. Can you see that? So now we can turn that one through. I've used 0.5 centimeters seam allowance. You might want to use more. And then the next stage is to do the opposite side, and then I need to create the pleats. So I'll get my pattern back out. This is the bigger version. I need to find the smaller version. and then I will press in my pleats and top stitch them, but I'll do that on camera tomorrow when the light is better. So yeah, this is the accordion pocket process so far. We have daylight. You can see that I have stitched and turned through my corners here. Let me show it to you a bit more clearly. This is what it looks like on the inside. It's a little bit of a mess. I need to do the other side quickly, and then I'll show you how we then pile these upon each other like this to create and press in the pleats. So we'll have pleats coming up to the top of the pocket, which is why we had to do the double fold hem first on the opening. We then have pleats coming along the bottom of the pocket, which will join up with these points, and then of course we have pleats going up the other side. So I'm going to sew this one together now. I'm actually going to record the process of sewing this so that you can see what I'm doing, and then that will help you when it comes to creating your own accordion pocket. Okay, so it's important that you're matching up the correct peaks and troughs. I recommend, if this is the first time you've done an accordion pocket, that you use pins just to hold it in place, because the last thing you want is to sew it wrong and then end up frustrated. So I'm just going to turn it so that all of the mountains line up. I'm going to turn it this way because I like to sew with everything on my left. I'm going to pop a pin into the first mountain going towards the starting point, and the second pin, I might not even need 3 actually. I'm just going to make sure. I'm not worried about the discrepancy here. Can you see one side is a little bit longer? Don't worry about that. It's about matching up your peaks, your mountains here. So I'm just going to pop the needle. Like so. And that's just to hold it in place really. What I'm then going to do is sew 0.5 centimeters, so a very small seam allowance amount. You can sew more depending on what you allowed on your pattern. You can see that I allowed 0.5 centimeters, and this pattern you can download for free on my website. So just be mindful of how much seam allowance you've assigned to that section. Now we're going to go and sew it. So I'm just going to make sure my stitch length is relatively small because I'm going to be cutting in. So I'm using a 2.5 on my Benina. I'm just going to line up, removing the first pin. Can you see that? And I'm going to start with my needle down where I want it to be. So this point I am level with the mountain that I have here. So I want to go 2 stitches over, about 2 stitches over. So I've got that 0.5 seam allowance. And it's just a case of sew, pivot, sew, pivot. Going to remove that slightly. Actually, we'll take it out completely. And in all honesty, it's not like anybody's going to sit there and inspect the seam allowances of your mountains and so don't worry about getting it absolutely perfect. Like, just do the best that you can, because we are going to turn these into little pleats, and then no one's really going to see them, so don't stress about it. Okay, the next step is of course to clip in. So these sharp angles, don't worry about the points, the ones coming out, just the inverted ones, because the inverted ones will stop us from being able to turn things through. Like that. These ones we can just fold the way that I normally do if I'm doing corners. You could grade it, but I wouldn't recommend it because we've got such a narrow seam allowance already. We don't want to risk fraying and everything falling apart. Okay, so now I'll show you how to turn it through. Okay, so when it comes to turning through, you've got multiple tools that you could use. I don't recommend using a seam ripper or stitch unpicker because of the sharp point. A lot of people would turn to it because of the sharp point, but you're probably going to just end up making a hole. So we're going to eliminate that one. I will quite often use my screwdriver if it's a small corner, so I can get in there and just neaten it up. You could also use the point of your scissors, but I find these to be quite risky as well, so we'll also eliminate those. And then finally, I've recently written about the different ways that you can use a sewing or measuring gauge, and I quite often will use this corner here. If it's a collar corner, I quite often will wedge that triangle into the point to get it nice and sharp. Again, it is a little bit sharp on the edges, so just be aware of not trying to pierce a hole. Okay, so we have cut in with, can you see? So we can move our bits easily now. What I'm going to do is for the mountains, as I call them, I'm just going to, can you see what I'm doing? I'm folding one section over like this and one section over like this. So I've created like a non-mitered corner really. I'm going to hold it on the underneath and I'm just going to push that through. I'm going to get my Oogie Boo. It's weird trying to do this on camera at the same time in a way that's not to make sure everything is on screen, because I'm not used to doing such close-up tutorials. And then we also need to do that for this one here. So I'm just going to turn that through. I'm going to also snip my threads, which I ought to have done and haven't. Okay, I'm just, oops, sorry. See, I went off camera again. Turn that. Can you see? Hold it. Turn it. Get the spiky pokey thing. There we go. These are not going to stay in this way. We are actually going to flatten these out in order to create our pleats. And then the last one, this one is technically our seam allowance, okay? So bend it, turn it, hold it, put your thumb and finger, squidge it through, get your pokey thing, and get it in there to create a point. Ta-da! And give it a little wiggle. Wiggling is really underrated. Wiggling is good. And there we have it. So we've now got our two sides complete. What we need to do now is put the pleats in. So we're going to get the iron. And the easiest way to do that is to grab your point right on the point. And the other one. You can use your pattern, but I think at this point a lot of it is just intuition. And you can finger press. If you want, you can put a pin to hold it in place. Get the next one. I told you it's really fiddly. So you're grabbing the peaks, okay? And again, place it over the original one. Grab your fabric. And press a pleat. And another pin. The only other way to do this is to like mark it in with chalk so that you get your pleats exact, but I don't have time to do that. I have a tutorial to get live. I'm actually going out for lunch today, a late birthday lunch with a good friend of mine. So this may or may not get uploaded before then. I think it'll probably be after. And then the same with this one. We're grabbing the peak, placing it on top. Can you see? So we've got a mountain, a pile of peaks. Okay. And the same on the other side. Oof. And then the same here as well. Now don't forget, this has got seam allowance included, so it's not going to line up perfectly. You can see I've gone off kilter. I've got more seam allowance here than I have here. That means that my pleat, one of my pleats is too big. So let's just see if we can maneuver it neatly. That will do. I'm actually going to do these ones as well while I'm here. Now for this, I am going to use my pattern because I'm going to so obviously I had marked in my notches, but that's pointless for me now because I've rolled my seam allowance. So we're going to grab a pin. We want 3 because we have 3 pleats. This is the first one. 1, 2, this is the second one. Nope, I've done that wrong. Yeah, that is the first one. 1, 2, this is the second one. 1, 2, this is the third one. Yeah, 1, 2, 3. Questioning myself for a moment. Trim seam allowance quickly because it's getting in my way. And then I'm going to hold this pin like this. I'm going to create a fold. And I'm just going to, oof. So you can see between the end here, which is my original, and this new one, I've created a sort of bouncy pleat. And I'm just going to pin that. To keep it in position. That looks good actually. And then the same with the next one. And that's the centered one. These are so fiddly. I think the only time I use these is when I'm making outerwear and trousers, like cargo trousers. And normally I wouldn't put quite as many pleats in. I'm going to remove that pin from underneath now, otherwise I'm going to sew over it, press over it. And then this one, which is the third one, we're going to grab it. It's the same thing. We're just creating a natural pleat. Why is it not working this time? And remember, boys and girls, we've got to do the same thing on the other side. So obviously you'd want to create your accordion pleats out of fabric that was more agreeable rather than slippy. Not, this isn't slippy, this is an agreeable fabric. It's a simple 100% cotton fat quarters. And it serves the purpose. But for you, just make sure, like, I'm sure everybody would love a pair of silk satin cargo pants with accordion pockets on the side, but really how easy and complex or complex is that going to be to make? So now we have that side. I'm going to go ahead and do the opposite side because this is already 10 minutes and nobody wants to sit through that. And then I will show you the pressing process. Okay, so we're going to press our pleats in place. You can see actually this is off grain. You can't trust fat quarters, especially when they're just randomly cut ones from the hobby store. So what I'm going to do is remove these pins because they're in my way now. And I'm going to give that a good press. This is my little travel iron, which does an okay job, but it's not amazing. You can see I've got a little mark here for where I would be putting a button if I wanted a centered button. I'm going to take this one out. And you're just making sure that those pleats all pressed nice and firm. And the next one, there may be other methods of making an accordion pocket, but this is the way that I know. Okay, we're going to do it the same on the other side. I'm going to take out those 2 pins. You can see this one side is coming undone, but it's fine. It's like nicely pleated. So we know where we are with that. And as I said before, ow. If you're not a fan of pinning, of course you don't have to, but I think you're going to get a more accurate result if you do pin. I'm not the biggest pinner. Sometimes I'm just like free for all and do stuff, but for something like this, I do think that pins make a big difference, as does pressing. I think many of you here have probably noticed that I'm not the biggest fan of pressing and ironing, which is stupid because you get a much better effect, a more professional finish when you do, but I just have issues with ironing. But I do it where it needs it. And if it's samples, I normally wouldn't, but you guys are honoured. Okay, I'm going to take out the next 2 because I want to get a neat finish and it's kind of buckling a little bit. So I'm going to lay that down. Sorry, I just realised all you can see is my hand. Okay, there you have it. Look at the beauty that is that accordion. If you imagine someone playing like an accordion, woo, with the bellows. So what we would now do is we are going to sew along each of these pleats just with an edge stitch to keep them like that. I am going to show you this process because we've actually got to pivot. And I realise this might be quite complex for someone who hasn't done it before. Is it focusing? So I'm going to come up to this corner and then pivot. And then this is where my screwdriver comes in handy again, because I'm going to fold that back the opposite direction to where it just was. And right on that corner, we're going to lift, pivot, and now we're coming back up the other end. So we're going to push this bottom corner back, but then we're going to flip it to the side like this. And the same thing, we're following that pleat all the way up. And there we have our first pleat in our accordion pocket. So now I move on to the second and then the third, and I will show you the finished result. I'm actually just going to show you this. So I'm on the second pleat. I've come down. That was the under, that was the middle. This is the final. So I'm on the second one, the middle. I've come all the way down and I've pivoted. As well as moving back the top, I also need to make sure that the bottom pleat is moved out the way, so I'm not sewing them together, okay? Because that will stop the accordion effect from happening. So if you look on the reverse, you can see I've pushed it right the way back. And now I'm going to sew along there. I just need to push everything out the way. Can you see that? I'm tucking everything out the way. And this will get tight because you've got a lot of bulk, but persevere. Pivot. And then we're moving the top pleat out the way. And then we're also moving the under pleat out the way. And then sewing machine foot down. You should sew as fast or as slow as you're comfortable with. The slower you go, I think the less mistakes you're likely to make at this point. And there we have it. Pleat number 2, complete. So we're looking pretty good so far. Now we just have the last one to do. Let's do it. I will do that one separately now that you've seen that process. Okay, there we have it. So now we're going to give it a good press. I'm going to do it from the reverse so I can make sure everything lines up neatly. I seem to have a wonky seam allowance here. I'm not sure what happened there. But nobody is going to see it, so it's okay. This is just a sample. Don't worry too much. You can see quite possibly that in some areas I went very close to the edge of the fabric because you're dealing with so much bulk when you get to these corners that it's really tricky. Let's scooch this like this. This is my seam allowance, don't forget. So I also need to deal with that. And there we have it. That is the Accordion Pocket. It's a little bit wonky at the bottom. Can you see that? It's just a little bit wonky. It's like going at an angle. Okay, now let's attach it to the actual garment. So because I've created mine with 3 pleats in mind, and then added the seam allowance on, I now need to create kind of like a faux 4th pleat out of this. So to do that, I'm going to fold my fabric back over so it lines up with the pleats I already have, and perhaps just a touch narrower so I have space for sewing. And I'm just going to press along there like so. You can see how it works because we have a sort of mitered corner already. And we're going to do that all the way around. This is where I'm going to get into trouble because I've put too much in the first one and not enough left over. But it's okay. This is just a sample. And then the same on the 3rd side. And then what we also need to do is then turn this back on itself because we're going to create the 4th pleat that we're going to sew down. So maybe I'll start from this side again actually. It's just going to be easier going forwards rather than going back. So I'm basically dividing this amount of fabric that we have here, I'm dividing it in half. And I'm pressing it. That we top stitch onto our garment. Let me show you what I mean. So we'll be like this. And we'll top stitch down along this edge, bum bum bum, which will leave us 3 pleats. Whee! See? I don't know why I turned the whole thing. I think because it's easier than turning. Now this is the part that's going to get interesting, is turning this section, which is obviously been created in a manner that is not conducive to sewing it with ease. Also, I don't have enough fabric down here. This is going to be really tricky because I didn't leave myself enough fabric for the seam allowance. As you can see, we've got one pleat that's a little bit bigger than it ought to be. Hey ho. And then the same with this side as well. It's hot. Then we need to do with the tricky bit here. Divide it in half. Can you see that? So I've basically just opened that seam. One. I'm trying to do it in a way that's going to be less bulky, but 1, good press. Make it stay there, make it stay there. There we go. We're just going to whack a pin. Whack a pin, whack a pin. Okay, and then the same on the other side. So let me show you how I did that. Start by pressing the seam allowance open because we clipped that mounting trough part earlier. We've got a nice clear line. So we're going to press it. We folded this back on itself like this and press it. So we're kind of mitering a corner. And then we fold this one in on itself. Oh, here comes the cat. If you heard a thump, that was her jumping off of the windowsill upstairs in the bedroom. And then this one in on itself. As I said before, it's really fiddly. And I don't have quite enough seam allowance because I over supplied the first pleat with fabric. And then I'm just going to pop a pin in there to secure it quickly. The last step is to attach the pocket to the garment or fabric sample that you're testing. So I'm just going to trim my threads a little. So I'm going to pop it quite low because I might at some point put a patch on here. Not a patch, what do we call it? A flap, sorry. So I'm just making sure that my straight edge I just pressed is on the pocket, lying nicely. I'm going to take the pin. So this is where it gets really tricky because you've got all the different corners. So take the pin out, she says, whilst maintaining the stricture that we just created. Pop it down, pull everything else out of the way, and pin it into place. Which way am I sewing? I sew down, don't I? So I want to sew this way, like this, and like this. And you're going to want to do it with both corners to get that straight. Okay, so we've got that side in. I'm going to do the side section as well while I'm here. There we go. I am trying to keep the pocket placement in line with the lines on the fabric, but actually I recently realized that there's no rhyme or reason to the way that the lines are printed, and it's off grain, so I shouldn't bother. But there we go. So that's section one. Oh, we're attached to the mat. Maybe what I'll do. So now we're gonna scooch this to this side and pin along. Now you can either straight stitch like normal, or you could zigzag along. Okay, I've removed that pin. Did you see that? If you didn't, you'll have to slow the video down to watch. Or you could zigzag. I might do the latter for this example just because I've got so little seam allowance along the bottom edge. And then again on, I'm trying to make sure that it is on the fabric nicely and I'm not about to buckle my fabric and have a hideous sample. And obviously if you were doing this on a garment, when you have created your pattern, you would be marking on your pattern for whether it was a jacket bodice front or if it's a trouser leg, you would be marking in your pocket placement where you intended it to be and then placing your pocket more accurately than what I have done. So there we have it. Go, ooh, look at that. I am an accordion pocket. It's pretty clever, isn't it? So now my job is to stitch the pocket to the garment, but also what you will quite often find is that there would be at the top here, these would be just stitched sometimes to hold them in place, and then your hand can still go in. My pocket won't because it's too small, but if my pocket was wide enough for my hand, this would be held in position, but the rest of it could extend out, as you can see, like a bellows. Okay, so I'm just going to top stitch that and then I'll show it to you. I'll actually show you the process of sewing it on so that you can see exactly how it works. This is the final step. So I'm going to start from the top hand side, and again we are doing that thing where we make sure we have everything moved out the way. It's a lot easier now You can just pull everything out. Line up your needle with the edge of your pocket or where you want it to be. Mine is a few millimeters in. And then we're just going to sew, sew, sew. So let's do this. We're going to go backwards to start. Now this is the tricky section. Oh, I overshot it. 1 second. I was looking for the seam, the diagonal seam. There we go. Pivot. And just like we did before, we're moving these sections back and then we're moving them to the side. Methodical, methodical, methodical. And off we go. Yes, we got it right that time. Pivot. And here we go again. Last time. And just make sure that raw edge is tucked in. Ta-da! So last job is trim threads and give it a press. You'd obviously probably want to put a flap on this as well, and in all honesty, so would I. The pattern that I've got on my website comes with a free flap, and it's positioned. This is where the button would go, this is the buttonhole, and it would sit nicely over the top. I don't have actual time to sew that now because I have to go and have lunch with a friend. So sorry. But actually I have shown previously, I think, how to do a patch pocket. That was yesterday, and I had a flap, although it was a bit basic in that. So maybe I'll do the flap in another tutorial. So give it a really good press. There we go. More scraggins, and let's have a look at what it looks like. Ooh, look at that. Isn't that lovely? That, my friends, is an accordion pocket. Yeah, you can see it. I've got too much fabric in the middle. Not enough. Ooh, isn't that lovely? So obviously you can do all sorts. I've used a contrasting thread so that you can see it, but it actually works really nicely. And as I said, normally you would have the top sections here stitched in place. So, but your pocket opening needs to be wide enough that you can get your hand in. And then what that does, if I pin it so you can see the effect, is it means that the top opening is restrained or constrained, but the rest isn't, so it still bellows out. Ooh. Can you see that? We've got quite a bit of movement in the bottom from those pleats. So you can stuff your pocket full of things. But obviously you just need to make sure it's wide enough for your hand. I've got really big hands. So there you have it. I hope you found that enjoyable. Actually, the pattern is bigger than this. I literally just printed it this size so that it would fit on a fat quarter. But the actual pattern that I link to on my website is bigger, so you can fit your hand in. It's actually this one. You see the difference? This one is tiny compared to it. So this is like a normal hand-sized version. This is the I'm going to squeeze my pocket sample on a fat quarter sample pattern. It's quite a nifty little pocket, isn't it? I love an accordion pocket. Some people call them a Bellows pocket. It's a little bit fiddly. I'm sure you've just realised that watching the tutorial. But it's worth it. It makes an interesting addition to your pocket repertoire. Yeah, I will actually pop a patch on this. There is not a patch, a flap, sorry. This is what the flap looks like. and it comes with the pattern. Very simple to make. I showed you yesterday how to do a flap on a patch pocket, but this one's a little bit more involved because it has more shaping to it. But for now I'm just going to leave you with the accordion pocket, primarily because I need to get ready to go for lunch, and I need to prep this video ready to go live later today. So as I've already said previously at the start of this video, if you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe for more videos on sewing, pattern making and designing your own clothes, and if you hit that bell, then YouTube will let you know when I post a new video. This week is Pockets Week. In case you didn't notice, we have done the jet pocket, sometimes known as the double welt. We've done the traditional welt pocket, so those are both insect pocket types, but they're created in slightly different ways for their construction method. We've done a patch pocket with a mediocre flap, which is a nice basic patch pocket, and then we've done the accordion pocket. Tomorrow we are doing the inseam pocket. I thought it was the slash pocket tomorrow. I've got the slash pocket out in front of me. Okay, tomorrow might be the inseam or it might be the slash pocket. There might be 3 coming because I also have the zippered pocket as well. And tomorrow's Friday, so there'll be 1 or 2 tomorrow and 1 or 2 on Saturday. Sunday will be my vlog, which is all about Frida Kahlo. And then next week we get started on collars, but the pattern making of collars. So stay tuned for those videos. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell, all that jazz. Check the description below for the accompanying tutorial, which should be up by the time this is published, but who knows. But I'll definitely leave a direct link to the pattern for anyone that wants it. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!